Hey there, clean freaks. It's King Balch. You are tuning in to episode 1 with our 2024 Sterile Packaging Expert, Malinda Elammari. And she is also known, a.k.a. as the Packaging Princess. Malinda, welcome to this series. We're really excited to dive into this topic of sterile packaging with the princess herself.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about doing this.
You're a clinical education specialist with Healthmark Industries, now getting a company. And you do education all around the country all the time. You're very involved in AAB guideline creation, in all kinds of training, certification support. You're being published, you're speaking, you name it. It seems like you're involved in it, even outside of the packaging conversations. And so, bringing that insight and that perspective to bear on packaging, because it's such a critical part of the sterilization process. We go through a lot of work to get these devices clean and get them over to the clean side and get them inspected and make sure it's the right one. And then it comes down to, do we get packaging correct? So let's start with this first episode, specifically talking about the packaging seal. Why is this seal so important in the big scheme of things and making sure that we're getting devices from dirty to clean to sterile?
Yeah. So to your point, we do so much around making sure cleanliness happens and doing cleaning verifications and stuff that I find often when I go out into different hospitals and facilities that the whole concept around packaging is just lapsed, right? Like the knowledge of what is packaging, what does it entail, and why is it so important? There's just a disconnect. So, with the sealing of the packaging, it's really important because that becomes your sterile barrier. So packaging in general, is your sterile barrier system. And so if you don't seal it correctly, you are not achieving a sterile barrier, which can allow microorganisms to enter inside the pouch, which then could potentially lead to infections for the patient. So seals on your packaging is extremely important, and making sure that your packaging is done correctly, which I think is going to be fantastic having this series so we can really dive into those packaging issues.
It's a really unique place in the workflow of the package itself, right? There's a lot of engineering design that goes into these packages. There's a lot of manufacturing process that kind of happens in an automated fashion. You get a machine that's churning through these things. And in that process, there's sealing that's happening on a large manufacturing scale that's not necessarily involving direct humans in the sealing process. So that happens before these packages get to SPD. And then we introduce them to SPD and we say, hey, all these other seals have been made with these machines, but this last seal, this final seal, is going to be up to you, Johnny. Good luck with that. So why is this technique, why does it have to happen that way, I guess, number one, and does it have to happen that way? And then number two, what's the technique? How do you teach the importance of the complexity of the human factor of the sealing process when we get to this stage in assembly?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, it does have to happen, right? Because we have to put the instrument inside. So we've got to be able to create some type of seal ourselves, and it's not something that's difficult. Honestly, it's just a matter of technique. So we find issues a lot with self-seal. So I've done a study as I've gone through the different facilities, and I'm going to be talking about this a little bit in my presentation coming up at HSPA this year. And it's basically the data that's come out of that. Majority of the issues is from self-seal pouches, more so than heat seal. And it's because it's a technique issue. We're hurrying, we're busy, we're trying to get 100 peel packs done. It's small, but there's a lot of them. And so plus we've got a million other things to do. It's not like we're just focusing on pouches. So trying to get those done, people tend to just, we do take the strip off, fold it over and seal it and have a nice day. But, there's a technique. You've got to fold over, make the crease first, then remove your strip, start in the middle with your thumbs or your 2 fingers and work your way to the edges of the pouch on a flat surface. And you do that about 2 to 3 times for each pouch. And it might seem like it's a lot, but it's really not once you get the go of it. But once you do that, you will not see like the seal issues. And what I mean by seal issues is if I take a self-seal peel pouch and I turn it on the edge, I shouldn't see what I like to call little loops in the seal at the bottom. Sometimes you can even take that pouch and blow into it and it blows up like a balloon. So, that we definitely have an issue there with our seal integrity. So making sure that we're doing that process correctly is crucial. And that really comes from your IFUs, from your seal, your pouches. A lot of them talk about the proper way to do the seal. The other issue we see is with with heat seal. And that comes from maintaining your heat sealer and stuff, or not running it through correctly, or something with the bar heat sealer. So we see wrinkles and channels or bubbles, or what they call in the industry seal creep. And so, you start seeing little like mountains or divots starting at one side of the seal. And so, that's a seal integrity issue. So we've got to make sure we're checking for those and doing the process correct.
I've got a feeling, Malinda, in this series, as folks tune in and start thinking a little bit more about their packaging, one of the questions that will probably come up is, why am I using the self-seal versus maybe the heat seal? Can you maybe speak to pros and cons, at least maybe how folks think about what the differences between these two packaging methods are? Because as you mentioned, depending on which one you're using, could be different techniques you're using, could also be different challenges that you may see when you're reviewing these seals.
Yeah. A lot of times what we hear and see, so from self-seal perspective, we sometimes see that being used in like a clinic setting, right? Or a smaller facility that really doesn't have the room or the need for like a complete heat sealer. Some facilities, a lot of them use both. They tend to go for heat seal. It's usually the longer, larger pieces of instrumentation that they have to create a pouch for. It's not the size, right? So there's benefits to both. The heat seal, I can create a custom sized pouch versus I've got to order, 40 different size pouches of self seal to try and make sure I have the right size. So there's benefits to heat seal versus self seal. It's just a matter of, making sure staff are educated on what to look for.
Well, that's a great segue here. To wrap up episode 1 and preview episode 2, because we've been talking about the seal challenges, but we haven't actually got into what is seal quality and what is this sealer maintenance that we've alluded to a little bit. What does that look like? And even we can maybe speak even more about identifying some more of these errors or issues with seals, because we did talk about some of the caverns or the bubbles or the streams or whatever you want to call them. The loops, I think, was one of the words you used. So we can get into more of those in episode 2 here. But I hope everyone who's tuned in has enjoyed this episode 1 with the packaging princess herself, our 2024 sterile packaging expert, Malinda Elammari. And as we tune in here for next month, make sure to subscribe to the Beyond Clean YouTube channel, where all these videos are going to be stored, as well as the Health Mark pages, where all kinds of great education is coming out, not just with sterile packaging, not just with things around the sterile processing assembly side, but they've got great content and training from the entire process, decontamination through assembly, sterilization, transport, in use, and then back around again. So a tremendous amount of content from their entire team. And with that, we're going to wrap up episode 1, and we'll see you next month here, episode 2, with the Packaging Princess.